dominant actually is a great chord, a great scale. So all Lydian dominant is. So what's Lydian? And remember, let's go back to our modes. Fourth degree, raised fourth, right? So play a C Lydian scale. Okay, now flat the seventh. So those two notes, F sharp and B flat, they're kind of your. So again, I try to relate the scale to what chord. So you may see a chord symbol that says C7 sharp 9. Well, that Lydian dominant is going to work really well, or especially a C7 sharp 11. That's what the chord is. That's how you start getting into these other sounds. We didn't get into diminished. Diminished is another great scale. Diminished is not part of the modes. Diminished is what they call symmetrical. So there are scales that are called symmetrical, meaning that they keep repeating the same pattern. Whereas the modes, each one of those modes has a different sequence. Maybe a flat third. The diminished sound, there are two diminished scales. And it's the same sequence. Half step, whole step, half step. Okay, that's a really cool sound that can be applied to all kinds of different chords, especially the altar, as you get into more your outside kind of chords. Whole tone is another one. Again, it's all whole steps. And they're great to practice just as a technical practice. And it's just, you can do them up the neck. So those are examples of symmetrical scales that fall outside of the modal thing. You mentioned melodic minor, okay? So melodic minor again is a more advanced approach. What I suggest is learning what's called the diatonic modes, the ones we went over first, backwards and forwards, get them in your head. But melodic minor is a very cool scale. Basically, it's a major scale with a minor third. So again, if you go back to C major and you play C major, everybody play C major with me for a second. Okay, so now we're going to flatten the third. Everything else is going to be the same. So this is going to mean stepping outside of the box. So you're going to have to reach with your first finger to get the E flat. So you're going to go C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B. So this is what's known as a minor major scale because it's got a major seventh and it's got a minor third. Everything else is natural. That scale alone has another 7 modes that come out of it. And again, this is a way more advanced harmony than I want to get into today, which is the remaining time we have. But for those of you who want to get into it, so the chord, again, I think of every scale having a chord that corresponds to it. If I play the arpeggio to that, I put that together in a chord, you have, okay, so it's a minor seventh with a major seventh. It's a minor major seventh. But the sound has been around for years. It goes back. Okay, have you guys followed the recent lawsuit of Led Zeppelin's "Stairway to Heaven"? You guys know about that? And fortunately, they found for them, they because you can't copyright a chord progression, and I think these guys are just trying to make some money off of Led Zeppelin. But that sound, that's part of what it was about, and that's minor major 7 right there.
One that used contrary motion too.
Right. But that chord progression, so what I'm playing is A minor, minor major, minor 7th, minor 6. So I'm just playing a simple A minor, but I'm dropping the bass note. So that's utilizing that minor major sound, and that's been used in dozens and dozens of songs, you know, going way back before Led Zeppelin, and actually I think in the trial they brought up some Italian Renaissance composer who used it in the 1600s. But in jazz it's been used a lot in tunes like My Funny Valentine, a bunch of tunes. So it's a cool thing to practice. So if you know the Stairway to Heaven lick, you know, as my guitar teacher weeps is not quite there. They don't use the minor major. But it's still a great progression to it. You know, Page is a great example of you know, somebody who he grew up loving jazz. He went and studied it real seriously at I think U of O or Portland State, no, Lane Community College. Then went to New York, went to Manhattan School of Music. But then he came up with this whole original thing, and you know, formed his group Helmet, and became, you know, hugely successful, and you know, Grammy nominated and all this. But we just met for the first time this winter. He was up here visiting his mom, and he came out to hear me play. And turned out that we have a mutual guitarist friend, John Stoll, who Page will tell the story about how he used to stalk John Stoll around Portland to different clubs with a little tape recorder and record all of his gigs. And John's this amazing guitar player that none of you probably ever heard of, and most people don't know, but he's a wonderful musician. He's just an encyclopedia of music theory. And he's kind of like your classic jazz troubadour. He travels, you know, he probably does 100,000 miles a year, you know, in his car and flying. He's based in Portland, but he's hardly ever there. And he travels all over the world playing jazz, and he just loves it. And so Paige and I had that in common. So when we first got together, we talked for a couple of hours just about jazz and jazz guitar. And then the next time he came up, I put together a little duo gig. And he's a great jazz player. I mean, so he has all the theory that, you know, that we've been talking about. You know, he wishes he could play jazz more. We were talking about it last night. He came after teaching 2 workshops. He came and played with me last night at my gig and played a set with me. And he's a wonderful jazz player, you know. But you know, he's made this career out of playing, you know, hard rock music and being quite successful at it. But he said if he could, he would just play jazz, you know, because he loves it. He's passionate about it. You know. Montgomery. Anybody know who Wes Montgomery was?
Oh, yeah.
So Wes Montgomery was this great black guitar player, and he's an example of somebody who was not educated in music very much, but he had this amazing ear. And there are a few examples of that, of players who did not read music and didn't really understand the theory, but they had such good ears. And Wes's claim to fame is that he didn't use a pick. He used his thumb.
Yeah.
If you watch videos of him, he had this huge hands, and his thumb was like this long. And so he came up with this technique of playing octaves. He plays single notes too. If you listen to, he would anchor his finger, and man, he had his thumb that could play as fast as anybody with a pick, single notes. But the unique contribution that he made to jazz was playing with octaves, because he found that it was a fuller sound when he was playing melodies. So instead of playing, he would play. And it just was this great sound. He was at the right place at the right time. I mean, he struggled for many years. He had like 6 kids and worked a day job, and he would come home. And the story I read is that he would come home. He lived in an apartment in I think he's in Indianapolis, and he would like to practice at night after, you know, working all day. But his wife was sleeping, and the neighbors, and this would be like, you know, after midnight. And he discovered that it was softer, so he could play with his thumb, and he wouldn't disturb anybody, where the pick was louder than the thumb. and he developed this callus, and so his it was amazing. If you get a chance, go check out some YouTube. There's some pretty cool concert footage of him playing, just to watch that technique. And I like playing octaves. There was a period where a lot of guitar players, they didn't want to sort of be copying Wes too much, but I think enough time has gone by. He died in 1968. Unfortunately, he was just becoming very successful. It was the period where jazz still could get on the radio and become hits, and Wes had several big hits on the radio and was actually making some serious money, and then died of a massive heart attack. I think he was 52 or something. But if you're gonna like explore a little bit of jazz guitar, definitely one. And very melodic player. He can play really fast, but very melodic, and it's just a great sound.
Did he use his thumbnail?
I don't know about his thumbnail. I mean, the videos I've watched is pretty much the side of his.
Yeah.
I think he just built up such a callus because he could do like alternate picking with it.
Wow.
But you watch. I mean, there's a John Coltrane tune called Impressions. It's a very fast modal tune. And he takes this amazing solo. I mean, just as fast as anybody you can imagine. So.